And we're live. Here we are. We'll give people a chance to join. Welcome, everybody. If you're wherever you're tuning in from, welcome to the Cliffs of Moher. My name is Barry Chandler. I'm here with Louise McGuane, founder of Corry. Louise, we're doing something special here.
We are. We were just saying we're doing a world's first. We're here at the Cliffs of Moher, which is right on the edge of Ireland, edge of the world. And for the first time ever in this very historic tower, we've got some casks of whiskey maturing very nicely.
So we're going to talk about the whiskey that we have here behind us, the really unique project, a collaboration between Louise and the Cliffs of Moher to mature, to finish this whiskey here for a period of time. We're going to talk about what's inside these casks. We're going to sample some of the whiskey in there. We're going to answer your questions about it, explain the project in a little bit more detail, just answer any questions you might have about it. But it's a really interesting project and something I think any whiskey fan or any Cliffs of Moher fan or any Ireland fan is going to want to learn a little bit more about. So wherever you're joining from, let us know in the comments. Tell us where you're joining from. If you've got a drop of whiskey in your glass, tell us what you're drinking. It's early in the United States at the moment. It's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon, East Coast, 11 a.m. West Coast. This is an early one for us because we wanted to get in here while the cliffs are open and come into O'Brien's Tower and stream live while we had a chance to. And it's a little bit bright outside, so we're going to get to see the cliffs in a few minutes. We've got a very fancy cliff cam in a couple of minutes. It's going to go live as well, so you're going to get to see the Cliffs of Moher from wherever you are as well, so that's exciting. All right, so first question's already coming in from Caroline. What keeps people from running off with these casks?
Very good question. So we thought about that when we put them in here because there's about 1.5 million visitors at the Cliffs every year. I think this year it's down. It's maybe about 750 or 1 million, but that's a lot of people. So the casks are, first of all, they weigh about 50 kilos. I don't know what that is in pounds.
110 pounds.
110 pounds, and they're quite securely tied to these racks here, so you have to pick up an entire rack and go. And then every single cask, the bung hole has been locked, so it's really quite tamper-proof. You need a chisel and a hammer to get in here.
Don't give them instructions.
No, that's true. With some of these things, there's still a little kind of activity going on. But
a 1-inch chisel is what you need, and a 2-inch hammer.
Yeah. Well, if there's a security guard upstairs, that's the other factor. So
you'd also have to walk past thousands of people with 110 pounds of whiskey under your arm.
Correct.
Yeah, you'd probably be stopped along the way. That's not a challenge.
No.
So we've got folks joining us from New York. Hi, Maliki in New York. Kirk is joining us in Kansas. David in Los Angeles. Johnny is in Long Beach, sipping on a dram in a can. Good man, Johnny. Cahur is in Waterford with a drop of gold spot. Riverside, California joining. Right, we've got folks from all over. David said his daughter was there at the Cliffs 4 or 5 weeks ago. Great stuff. Probably saw the casks.
Yeah.
Tom is joining us from Cape Cod. Lovely. J.M. Keane. John, you were here. You saw the casks. You took a picture, which was great. So one of our club members was here a few weeks ago and took a photograph of these casks. And like he said there, he tried to make off with them. Mary Pritchard is joining us from Chicago. Hi, Mary. And Cheryl's got water in her glass for now. That's all right. That water will turn into whiskey at some point, magically. And Fanula's in sunny Belfast. So if you've got any questions as we kind of spend the next 7 or 8 hours locked away here in the tower, put your questions up there. No, we'll be here for 45 minutes before they kick us out. Share your questions in here. Louise will take your questions. I'll take your questions. And I think we have a nice number of people here. I think we might do a little cliff cam. We're very fancy here. So Niamh from Corry is going to walk outside the tower. And she's going to kind of walk around. Now, it's so windy outside. We thought we could do this, didn't we, outside?
Yeah, we were going to do it outside. But this is the west coast of Ireland in the middle of August, of the high summer. And it's major gale force winds. We're right on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. So we're getting real weather today.
It's so windy, yeah. I mean, I did a video out there earlier and you couldn't hear a thing. But Niamh's going to put her camera on and she's going to walk around there. So we'll bring her on when she's dialed in. Let me see any other questions we've got here. Tammy is joining us from Colorado. Paul from Western New York. Caroline's got lemonade. Great stuff. Mike from Fort Myers. Hi, Mike. Joe wants to know, will these be available in your direct-to-consumer page? So we'll talk about where all these whiskies will eventually be available and what we're going to do with them, what the path to market is, or should I say path to your glass is, so that you'll know how to get hold of them when the time comes, which will actually be very soon. So there's Niamh now. Here she comes. Here comes the cliff cam. This is really high tech. Here we go now, live from the cliffs. Look, there's Niamh outside.
Yeah, so here's the Cliffs of Moher, guys. She's right outside the tower. This is O'Brien's Tower, where we are right this second. And this was built by Cornelius O'Brien in the 1800s. And the function of this tower was essentially to attract tourists here. The Cliffs of Moher was not a tourist attraction until that point in time. The cliffs are about 300 feet high. You can see them there. They were actually featured in The Princess Bride. If you remember the Cliffs of Doom, that was actually the Cliffs of Moher. And you're looking out there towards Hag's Head. Hag's Head, it actually fell into the ocean, but it used to be a cliff formation that kind of looked like a Hag's Head. So if you jumped off the cliff right now and just swam away from the tower, you would hit New York or Boston in about 3,000 miles. We're literally kind of right on the edge. And they are the highest cliffs in Ireland, some of the highest cliffs in Europe, as a matter of fact.
She's doing a great job with
she is, really good.
And JJ Corry, how far is JJ Corry? You're the farm from
here? So like if you just follow us around the coast there, keep going kind of left. As the crow flies, we're very, very close. We're only probably 20 miles away, but it's quite a winding road to get there. But we're just kind of right around the corner, essentially, from here. So we're very proud of the Cliffs of Moher. They're one of the biggest attractions here in County Clare, and we're a Clare whiskey, so we want to celebrate everything that's great about the county.
This is the first time a collaboration like this has taken place, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So when I started JJ Corry, I always thought, wouldn't it be amazing to do something with the cliffs, locally, and have some casks perched here, and this and it happened,
Yep.
The guys at the Cliffs were kind enough to kind of work with us on this, and we've been talking about it for the last year or so it's the first of its kind.
So we're inside the tower that Niamh was just showing us now, inside O'Brien's Tower, 9 casks of whiskey behind us. So you can see 2, 4, 6, and then there's 7, 8, 9, just the other side of the camera there, just beside the table actually. So 9 50-litre casks. So these would be known as quarter casks in the industry. Can you tell us a little bit about, what have we got here?
So I think this is really important. So look, we're at the Cliffs of Moher. It's very cool. This little tower in and of itself, like we were just saying earlier, is extremely damp. And that's partly because it's sort of being battered by the spray that's coming up the side of the cliffs the whole time. The reason we're using quarter casks for this is because you get a more intensive maturation from a smaller cask. You guys will know this probably, but you'll very often, particularly in America, you'll see a lot of people using these. Because there's the casks are smaller, you get a lot more concentrated flavors from them faster. You're not having faster maturation. That's not what's happening. You're having a faster uptake of flavor from whatever's in the cask prior. So these casks, they're all sherry casks from Spain. They've had sherry or sherry wines in them in prior, and they were made for us by our cooper Rafa out in Montilla. They spent 18 months seasoning with various different wines prior to being emptied, put on a truck to me, and I had them filled essentially within a week of being emptied. So they were super, super fresh casks. So what we're seeing is really flavorful, very quick sort of flavorful age advancement of these whiskies.
And so it's all 3 different styles of whiskey have been distributed amongst the 9 different casks. So we've got single grain, single malt, and single pots of whiskies.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so we have 3 different varietals, and we have 4 different varieties of casks then as well. So, at the end of that, like what we do with JJ Corry, I'm always talking about our library of flavors. And this is like a mini library of flavors here, because even though, there's a malt that's gone into 3 of these casks, you're going to get very different results, out of those 3 casks, depending on what was in the cask prior.
So we're 700 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. And when I came up to visit these casks, when they just came in here, 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago?
It was in middle of June, actually, middle of June.
Oh, wow, so 6 weeks.
Yeah, they've been here in a while, yeah.
So these casks actually look different. So they are absorbing, the impact of the ocean is incredible here, and the sea spray, the salt in the air. These casks had silver, kind of shiny metal hoops. They're now rusted already. We were standing in here for 20 minutes, and my notebook, the paper has got wet. Just from standing in here, there's moisture on the walls, so there's this unique environment here that's lending itself to the wood, if it's already rusting the hoops, what's it going to do to the whiskey inside? It's got to have an impact, isn't it?
It has, yeah. I mean, like, we'll see at the back end of it. Like, the other key thing that's happening as well is that, like, you know, because these casks are small, and this tower has, you know, it was built in the 1800s, so the walls are 4 or 5 foot thick. So it is getting nice and toasty in here in the daytime or even in the nighttime. And then we're seeing a lot of expansion and contraction. Like, we're getting not exactly leakage on, you know, out of the bungs, but you can see that that liquid is trying to get out. And what that means is just that, you know, you're going to get a lot more advancement into the staves by the whiskey. So again, it's just that more aggressive kind of flavor extraction from the wood.
Does this environment cause so you talk about the expansion of the wood, so for those who might not be familiar with the maturation of whiskey is all about the movement of the wood, the expansion, contraction of the wood, and allowing the spirit to interact with the wood. So do we have a kind of a hypothesis that this environment does more of one of those things? Expansion, contraction?
It definitely does, just because of the temperature and the temperature differential. Like, what we'll do is we have a little thing, and we put it in for the last month of maturation for August in particular, where it should be warmer here in August. And we'll measure exactly what kind of levels of temperature we're getting and what humidity we're getting and that kind of thing. This humid environment is good right now. I think, you know, for a short stint of maturation, you normally don't want something that's too humid, because it can lend itself long term to like a flabby kind of a spirit over a long period of time. But this is fine for now. You know, you could talk all you want about a briny kind of a spirit. We're not really. I don't know that we're going to get that. We'll see by the end of the process. But certainly it'll be having an effect on what's going on inside.
So the smaller casks give more surface, more contact with the wood.
More intense.
Yeah,
so more intense flavor extraction, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should probably sample these. So we want to sample these and taste them and understand them a little bit. I've never tried them, I've never tasted them. I have completely trusted Louise when she called me and said, we've got this thing, should we do it? And I said, yes, what have you got? And here we are. Louise and her team have been sampling the whiskies over the past few weeks. And you've seen a progression from when you put them in here that you don't think you would have got from a bigger cask.
No, not this fast. You would over time. So these were already in sherry casks prior to being decanted into these smaller guys. So the maturation process had already kicked off, and the flavor process, finishing process had already kicked off. So what we're getting is a sort of a much more intense version of that now for the next few weeks or months, basically. We'll start off down here.
Yeah, so we're gonna draw some. I'm gonna take this off the screen so you get to see it. So we're gonna draw some whiskey out of the casks, sample a little bit, and we'll talk about what happens next after we finish sampling, and how eventually these whiskies get bottled and where they go.
Yeah. So we have a little key for everything. You can see it here. I just have to find my right cask.
They're all locked, by the way.
Well,
I suppose we can show the. Could you tap on that link again and maybe show us the locks, if possible? We're putting you on the spot now. See how fast Niamh can respond in real time, not rehearsed. So all the casks have individual kind of padlocks on them because of the 1.5 million people coming through here.
Yeah, here's our little key, essentially, that we use.
We're going to call it cask cam.
Cask cam, brilliant.
Yeah.
You're very nimble. All right, so here comes the cask cam. There we go.
It's actually not the one I want. It's open now. It's open now. I saw the extra color.
It's that one there.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Great.
JJ wants to mature a few of them over at Niagara Falls. He's over in Canada, on the Canadian side. Get some moisture from that too.
Yeah, certainly would. All right, let's see. I might have to angle this in a weird way. There we go.
Seeing a live draw from the cask. Want me to angle the cask?
Push it over.
All right.
Yeah, perfect. It's gonna be perfect.
Yeah. So this is malt whiskey, single malt whiskey, aged in a finished in a Palo Cortado cask, which we'll talk about. So we drop in.
Yeah.
So we're tasting these purely for your own education, not for our own joy, as you'd imagine. Okay. So these are whiskies that have spent a number of years maturing in bourbon.
Started off in bourbon and then went into butts. So 600-liter butts, essentially sherry butts, for the last year or so.
Yeah.
So we already kind of kicked off that maturation process essentially, and then removed them from the butts. The butts were from a bodega called Bodega Garvey, which was actually founded by an Irishman in like the 1700s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they were, they were used for sherry maturation for years and years and years, and that bodega actually shut down.
Okay.
So they were getting rid of all their butts.
Yeah.
So Rafa approached me and asked me if I wanted to get them, because they're very difficult to get a hold of, those kind of butts that have been used for a long period of time. And I said yes, and I brought them back to Ireland. So I have a ton of, I've loaded them on the rack.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were used initially to kind of kick off this maturation. So you don't see a lot of Palo Cortado necessarily. It's starting to kind of come through traditionally in sherried, fortified wine, finished whiskies. You'll see the ones at the more sugary range, like PX and the Oloroso. Those very often have sugar added to them, as wines. So they're very sweet, and they do beautiful things with single malts in particular, essentially, because of those lovely big round chocolatey coffee notes. You don't really get that from a Palo Cortado. It's kind of lower down on the scale of maturation when it comes to sherry wines, and it's a lot more floral, which I quite like, and I think it lends itself very well to Irish whiskey, but it's underused. There's a few guys that are doing it, but for me, I think there's a real future in the lesser known kind of sherries being part of the maturation process, essentially.
And we're tasting these raw in the sense of unfiltered. There's lovely bits of char in there, which is nice.
Yeah.
Bit of authenticity.
Yeah. The color is nice. I don't know if we want to look at it.
Yeah.
You're going to get a decent color from these. I don't know if you can see it
very,
there.
very fancy.
Yeah, you are going to get good color take up from these. Like, it's significantly different than it was when it went in, and again, that's because of this guy. So you're going to see that, and this is a malt, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old malt, 6-year-old malt that went in.
6-year-old malt. The nose on it is very, very powerful for what we might consider maybe a younger age whiskey, but it noses very kind of. There's a lovely old cellar nose.
There is. There's a bit of kind of rancio sort of stuff going on nearly,
I mean, you identify that, you spot the sherry straight away, wouldn't you?
You absolutely would. But I still think it's quite delicate. It's not. It's not. Very often, the sherry bombs are beautiful. They're lovely whiskies, and you either like them or you don't. But like this is never going to be a sherry bomb because of the Palo Cortado. It'll never get to that point where it's that definable bomb in your nose. But it's always just a bit more delicate and floral. And I think it goes well with this malt. Like it has those kind of. There's a lovely fruitiness to this malt, obviously. And Sláinte.
A little sip.
And I think it translates very well. We are, of course, cask strength here now. Yeah. With the back palate there, you're really seeing that influence.
Yeah.
That's really coming through. Those more kind of like jasmine, floral sort of notes from the sherry are very, very prevalent in the back palate and in the finish.
Goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah, significantly.
Yeah.
And not hot.
It's not, no.
Not hot.
There's a black pepper spice that's there, but it quickly dissipates into that sweetness.
Yeah.
But not a massive sweetness.
No, it's not cloying.
It's not, no. It's a lovely balance, actually.
Yeah, and there's a nice mouthfeel then as well. There's a very creamy, round
mouthfeel. Creamy is a great description.
Going on as well.
Now, you also took samples of all of these before you put them in, so you're able to compare what's coming out of these with what you had beforehand to see the effect, the maturation effect.
Yeah, so we have control samples essentially just to kind of line them up and see where they're headed. And the nice thing about these is, they're all individual little teeny tiny single casks, but we're not ruling out blending these necessarily towards the end. We don't know yet.
There's a big we don't know, isn't there?
There is a big we don't know.
So there's 9 casks here, but it'd be mad to start off the period of finishing up here saying we already know what's going to happen to them, because that's not letting nature decide what it's going to do to the whiskey.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in you kind of have to listen to what this says to you. Like, one of these might turn out very badly. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know because of the conditions and the size of the cask, and it's a bit of an experiment for us.
Yeah.
So, and if it does, what do you do with it then? You find maybe it'll make a great component for a blend.
Right.
That's very often kind of what tends to
Yeah.
happen. You never throw your whiskey away just because it doesn't taste well as a single cask. You know,
Yeah.
not every cask can be perfect. But there is a bit of an I don't know. So, and that's why, you know, we've let these rest now for like nearly 2 months here, and they'll be here for another month or so. And that's probably going to be enough time because you can see like there's a bang of influence off of that.
Yeah.
And then we'll, you know, next week or at the end of this week, we're really going to start to be very analytical about each cask to understand where is it going, what flavor block has it gone into, will it lend itself to a single cask, or you know, is it a component for a blend essentially? So those are all decisions that we need to make.
So the part of whiskey making that takes the longest is the aging, the maturation, the finishing of the whiskey. Distillation, fermentation is over a few days a week, but aging is taking at least 3 years, in this case 6 years plus for some of these whiskies. And so you're really at the mercy of your environment and the weather conditions, the climatic conditions around your cask, 100% effective. If you move these casks 10 miles inland, they would behave very differently, wouldn't they?
Very differently. You'd still have silver here, and you know, like I don't think they'd be as aggressively kind of expanding and contracting, and you just have a different outcome, you know.
So 9 single casks, so each one is an individual single cask. They may be bottled as single casks, they may be blended depending on which way they go, as we said. So that's also up to you as kind of club members, Stories and Sips Whiskey Club members, as we kind of share our thoughts and share the tasting notes. As Louise and the team get more analytical, we'll share those back with you and talk about all the permutations on what we could do based on what we're learning, get your thoughts on the Whiskey Club. So if you're not already involved with us through the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club, if you're just hearing about us and JJ Corry for the first time, we'd love you to just give us your email address so we can keep you up to date on what's happening here, storiesandsips.com/cliffs. We'll put it up on the screen so to make sure your details are in there. You can also watch a full video of the project that we kicked off here 6 weeks ago. And what we intend to do is, Louise very kindly is offering us in the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club access to as many of these as we want. So if we as a club decide we want 1 cask, 2 casks, 9 casks, whatever it is we decide as club, then we get to bottle those, and then we will ship them over to the United States and elsewhere. So that's an exciting kind of end of the project in the next 2 months or so, we think.
Yeah.
Is where we're going to get to. A few questions before we tap into the next cask. There was a question about the tours on your own farm. Do you have any plans for a visitor centre, asks G, at the farm, even if we're only open during the summer tourist season?
I do not at the farm, no, but possibly around here, like where we have a site very, very close to the Cliffs of Moher, and we're very seriously looking at developing that for a second rack house, second or third rack house, effectively. So long term, that might act as something like that. If you stay at a local hotel here in County Clare as well, like they'll finagle a visit for you. The concierge will do that, but we're not open to the public per se.
If question here actually from Spiker, what type of sherry he asked? So it's
Palo Cortado.
Palo Cortado.
Yeah.
The 4 of them are how many?
So we did Palo Cortado,
Yeah.
Amontillado, PX, and Oloroso.
That's right.
That's what's from here.
That's the 4 sherry casks.
Yeah. So when we're gonna have it like, so one of the really important people to talk to about this sort of element is our Cooper Rafa, and you know, these are all from different wineries around Montilla and around Jerez, effectively, where sherry is made. They're individual small scale wineries that produce sherry for a living and have been doing it for hundreds of years. Sourcing sherry casks can be quite difficult because there are cooperages in Spain that just season casks. So they'll just use sherry over and over and over and over and over again, and you just get a very kind of monotonous finish on those kind of casks. We work with like real people, real bodegas around Spain. I go over there with our Cooper Rafa. We travel around, we taste the wines, and if you like that particular wine, then I put it in the back of my head and I go, okay, what would that match with from a whiskey perspective? So it's a fairly involved process. Like
the coopering side of things is very interesting. So this week we're going to record a chat with Rafa, the Cooper. Cascanolia is the cooperage in Spain, and he's going to talk us through how they made the casks, talk about sherry, talk about its influence, talk about this project, but we're going to ask him a lot of in-depth questions, so straight to a Spanish cooper to understand. I mean, these are the kings of cooperage really in Spain, so we're going to get to understand them. We'll share that video on storiesandsips.com as part of this project as well. So over the coming week, we'll share that video. Let me see, what other questions do we have coming in? Omar wants to know who's going to buy a bottle in America and ship it back to him. We can probably see his house across the way there. Okay.
I'll
There's
helicopter
always
it
one.
to you, don't worry.
There's always one. Just wherever you are, whether you're in Ireland or elsewhere, just go visit storiesandsips.com/cliffs and we'll keep you up to date on what's happening there. James wants us to turn on the smell-o-vision. If we could do that, we could retire.
Oh yeah, no, it's pretty good in here because it's small as well. So yeah, no, there's nothing like wood and whiskey evaporating, and and that smells fabulous.
Half this moisture is probably just the angels share, let alone the rain outside.
I'm gonna should I go into the next one?
Yeah, let's go to the next one, yeah.
Yeah.
So this one
This
is
is the Amontillado.
Amontillado
Yeah.
malt as well.
That's correct.
Yes, these casks will be reused. I was asking Louise that question earlier, so they'll spend 3 months here and then they'll be used for other projects on the farm as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's some bang of colour on that now as well, actually, just as a matter of interest. So
Oh yeah.
that's again 5 years old. You know what I mean? And that's coming directly from these small casks. So this is my personal favorite, to be honest with you, but it's very controversial. Not controversial, but I've been tasting this with a lot of people recently. So the Palo Cortado, so sherry is wine, right? It's all made from the Palomino grape, and it's essentially the different kinds of sherry are just different levels of maturation of that particular wine. And we'll go into it more with Rafa because it gets quite complicated. But this is Amontillado, and this would be like the third level of maturation of sherry. And the notes that you get from an Amontillado are like hazelnuts, basically, extremely nutty notes. Like it's
nose is incredible.
Yeah, and I love it, right? And I love Amontillado in general, right? I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in Spain with Rafa, knocking around bodegas, tasting this. This comes from Bodega Delgado, who are extremely famous for their Amontillado. When you go and visit them, they'll pop a cask and they'll be like, yeah, it's 125 years old Amontillado, and it'll cost 50 quid a bottle or something.
Amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So Amontillado is not commonly used in whiskey as a finish at all. Just again, because people gravitated towards those PX Oloroso flavors. So I personally love it. How would you describe it?
This is like the nut on the top of it's like a hazelnut swirl kind of a nut.
Yeah.
It's on the top of what are those little chocolate vanilla marshmallow things that have a nut on top of them.
Yeah.
It's
Whirly whip or something.
Hazelnut whirl.
whip.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like that.
There's that lovely, light, delicate nuttiness, but there is a little hint of vanilla and sweetness coming in behind it straight away.
Yeah. And then the influence on this hits immediately, basically on the front palate and mid palate. With the Palo Cortado, you're getting it towards the back, more. It's much more pronounced.
Yeah.
But here you're getting it kind of right up front. And it's almost like cookies, like there's one particular cookie that I got the other day, which is in the chocolate spread Nutella, and it was in cookie form.
Oh yeah.
And for me,
that's a great description.
Yeah, it was really sort of giving me that sort of brioche kind of nutty sort of vibes. And then it's very, very prevalent on the back palate again there. Much more tannic. If the Palo Cortado was really creamy, this is a much more kind of lip smacker of a mouthfeel.
And I think I get more of the malt, the biscuity malt, and some of the kind of the floral notes of that.
Yeah, there's more cereal influence in it, definitely.
Yeah, but a lovely kind of subtlety on the nose.
Yeah, I mean this always throws people. So we've been using this in blends recently, just playing around with it, and it throws people, because it's not an expected flavor profile. Yeah. But I'm a very big fan.
And we're tasting these at between 55 and 60%.
You're way up there, yeah. I'll get the exact ABVs, but they're they're in the high 50s, early 60s kind of thing.
Like we're all looking for flavor when it comes to whiskey. And we're trying to find where the unusual places flavor can come from.
Yeah.
This is one of those projects where the climate, the casks, they're all contributing to ultimately the thing we want, flavour. And we don't all want the same flavours. There's something different, there's something out there for everybody.
Yeah.
And somebody will like the first one, somebody will like the second one.
Yeah, they're very different. You know, they're
Yeah.
like, look, it's malt. It's 6-year-old. It's malt put into 2 different casks and just brought along in a little different way towards in the last few years, and you have 2 exceedingly different outcomes. You know,
A lot of people like Palo Cortado. Do we talk about where these whiskies have originated? You have a library of spirits on the farm.
I do, but these are GND. The reason is that a lot of my other stuff just isn't mature enough yet, so we wouldn't be able to release it, you know, at the moment. So all of this stock happens to be GND. We don't have a big sort of all matured on the farm. So they were all, you know, they were some of the first liquids that I bought back when I found.
So they were distilled to your kind of spec and
Yeah.
early on at Great
Very
Garden
early.
Distillery in Dundalk, and then matured in Clare.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, like since, you know, I was one of the first customers of John there way back in the day, and the still has changed subsequently. Like they had to change the still around. So these would be a little different to kind of the later profiles, and they would have all gone into bourbon and Jack Daniel casks to kick off, that I sourced myself, and then made their way into those butts, and now the quarter casks.
Good question there from Omar. Do we know who else has used Amontillado for Irish whiskey outside of Lochrie, recent cask strength, and Celtic cask?
Not that many, I think. Yeah, like it's just kind of starting to come through. This is the same as Palo Cortado, like it's just starting to come through.
Yeah.
We have some Fino casks as well. I don't know if anyone's done Fino yet. But people are starting to wake up to the joys of sherry outside of Oloroso and PX, essentially, just because stylistically it's just so different, you know. And also, you know, we have grain in here as well, and the grain really lends itself very well to the less sugary sherries, you know, because of those lovely floral notes. So very often in whiskey, and in Irish whiskey in particular, stuff kind of became traditional by accident, really, and then it kind of stuck.
Yeah.
But now all the new guys coming in, like you look outside of that, and you it's worth the crack. It's worth an experiment, you know.
Yeah.
If you can find quality people to work with, essentially.
Let's take a look at. Do we have a grain whiskey handy, or are they up on top?
I think they're both up on top.
Okay, if not, pot still.
Yeah.
And we're going to try as
Oh,
well.
no, we have an Oloroso grain here, actually.
Oloroso grain.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can give it a crack.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
all the different styles of whiskey here, and again, it's not decided yet how these whiskies get bottled. Whether is there a set, is there a series, the Cliffs of Moher collection, perhaps? Who knows? That's ultimately what we have to decide over the next few weeks and a couple of months. So a couple of dates to put in your diary, whether you're in the United States or you're in Ireland, to get involved with this project. August 30th. So on August 30th, we're going to do a tasting up here in the tower for up to 8 Whiskey Club members. So the first 8 Whiskey Club members, when we send out a link, who reply and say, I want to come, you're going to get a free tasting up here as part of your club membership. But we can only fit 12 people in here, and there'll be a team of 4 and then 8 others for insurance reasons. So 8 people will do a tasting up here, but for those who can't make it live in person, we'll stream it, and we will, you can join in virtually, but we'll have people here in the tower as well. Another date to keep in mind is September 23rd. So we're going to come to the United States, we're going to come to New York, and we're going to do a tasting with some of these whiskies on September 23rd and a meetup in New York. So I teased this out in our Facebook group last week, a potential meetup in New York. Put it in your calendar, September 23rd, it's happening. We're going to do a tasting with Louise's team. You're going to get to taste some of these. We'll bring some of these over and you get to sample them in New York, in Manhattan on September 23rd. If you want details of all these events, make sure you're registered to our email on storiesandsips.com or storiesandsips.com/cliffs, and we'll give you all the updates. All right, so what have we got here?
So we have a grain that's now in Oloroso. So this would be the more traditional varietal that'd be used. So again, heavily fortified and sugar added, essentially. So big sort of sugary, sweet sort of notes.
Oh, there's a lovely floral nature to this, isn't there?
That's your grain. Like it reacts very differently.
Great order makes great grain.
Yeah, they really do. You can't you couldn't bait it with a stick. It's very good. And this also started off. So we've noticed, and it's interesting. So all the grain that we have a lot of grain from different people, and you kind of would think grain is made in a big old kind of column still, and it's just flying around, and there's not a massive amount of nuance you would imagine in a grain still, particularly at the scale of the big guys. And as it turns out, there is.
There is. There's a ton.
As it turns out, there is. And
you go a few points higher, you'll strip all that flavour out. But
but the difference is just and the mash bill tends to be the same. Like they don't really mess around with it too much. But there's a massive difference. Yeah. So this started off its life, and I've loved this stock. Like I thought I'd be sitting on grain for 10 years before I did anything with it.
Yeah.
And all our grain is coming out is so flavorful that it's able to be used a bit younger, you know, not 3 necessarily, but it's going out the door at 5 and 6 years old. And I just didn't think that'd happen. And that's because there's 2 things. It's very good at GMT, and then also the first layer of casks that we ever put this into were hyper fresh bourbon casks. Okay. Like they were first fill, and they were. I went over and I got them all those years ago, and then they were on the farm being filled within like 6 weeks, basically. And they really reacted phenomenally well. And of course, I've tasted this from a lot of other producers as well, and it's fundamentally different just depending on the cask.
Absolutely.
So it had a really good start in life, first off, and then it went into the sherry cask.
Not every grain whiskey is aged in first fill bourbon. Typically, second fill, third fill.
No. It's been mistreated. Grain has been mistreated for a long time, and it's been given a second thought. And like, I have a real soft spot and an affection for it because it's like a child that just performs very well in school or something. Like, it's just done very well. So I kind of love to nurture it a bit. And again, you won't see a lot of grain in sherry finishes either necessarily. You know, it's normally kind of it does tend to kind of be reserved for malts effectively, but the reactivity of it to a finish is really something like. Yeah, so it's a little confusing because normally it is lovely and floral, but it's chocolatey in here as well, you know.
There is I think tastes and colours, so there's that brown kind of tobacco almost little note living on top of that as well.
Yeah.
This is like an effervescence. It's almost like bubbles on the tongue, like cask strength, lighting up nicely.
And there's a lovely, almost kind of, you're right, that like kind of leathery tobacco start nearly.
Very unusual for a grain, right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Grain whiskey is typically all bourbon maturation, typically with then maybe a wild finish, but not always sherry. They don't typically get filled into sherry casks. Certainly not first time around anyway.
No. No, there's a lovely roundness to that as well, and you do towards the end you get that you do get that like, sort of lovely kind of tobacco-y piece kind of coming back around again. But the nose on it is banger.
We're definitely getting the sherry cask influence. So 2 wildly different styles of whiskey. The first whiskies we tasted were malt, 100% malted barley. This whiskey is 95% corn, maize, 5% barley. So completely different grains, completely different flavour profiles, yet there are similarities to those to the notes, 100% attributable to the cask.
This is 70-30.
70-30.
This is what I said. That this is 70-30. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, mostly corn.
Yeah.
Mostly corn. Yeah, basically. Wildly different. And again, you know, we'll keep at them. But like, are these components blends? Are they individuals? You know, that's kind of to be determined. I think as we go along.
These are all very tasty already on their own. Like you could they're really good.
And you line them up and they're very different animals. You know, they're extremely different animals. So, you know, it's actually a fun little project just to line them up and go, okay, there you've got your Palo Amontillado, Oloroso influence. Like it's very, very, very different. And that's why we do this, because you know, whatever's been in the past prior is going to have such an aggressive kind of influence on what's gone in there now, particularly at the size of cask, and it's a good illustration of that, I think.
If you're just joining us, we are coming to you live from the Cliffs of Moher, atop the Cliffs of Moher, 700 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. We're in O'Brien's Tower, built by Cornelius O'Brien in 1835. And we're finishing, JJ Corry, Louise and the team of JJ Corry have brought 9 casks of whiskey, 50-litre casks, which are mature, finishing here. We say finishing as kind of a smaller maturation period for a number of months. They're soaking in the climatic conditions of the cliffs, which if you've ever visited the cliffs, you'll know you either get blown away or covered in rain. And that influence is coming through here. Our notebooks are wet and moist from standing in here. The casks are wet, and that's a wonderful way for us to experiment with whiskey. And so the goal here over the next few weeks is to measure, analyze, test this whiskey, right? You're going to come and draw samples and understand it. And then on August 30th, we'd like you to join us again virtually, and then a few of you in person here, where we taste how these whiskies have matured even further. There's one more style we haven't tasted yet, which is the pot still.
Yes.
Do we have any access to the pot still?
We do, yeah.
Which is this
It
one.
is on your left.
This guy here.
So this is the next style.
This is the pot in PX.
Dave says we want all of them. Well, Dave, you can have them all. Everything is available at all times. These will ultimately be shipped to the United States for those of you who want to order these whiskies once they're bottled. If you've been following this journey, if you've been to the Cliffs of Moher and you want a whiskey to commemorate your visit to the Cliffs of Moher, or you want to understand and taste whiskies that have matured up here, finished up here, and check their taste, their influence, we'll be releasing these through storiesandsips.com over the coming weeks once they're bottled. And again, we're sharing all aspects of this journey. So for those of you who are joining, who've never been on a live stream with us before, you're getting to see Louise McGuane casks, which is amazing. And storiesandsips.com is the home of our whiskey club. And we have events like this, whiskey releases like this exclusive to the club. So if you want to participate in that, just visit storiesandsips.com to become a member of our whiskey club. Let me turn this
Yeah,
way.
I need a bit of an angle, please. Perfect. That'll be me.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what's this device you're using here, Louise?
This is called a whiskey thief.
A whiskey thief.
Whiskey thief. And it works. Oh, that's a big sample.
That's a great sample.
Yeah, I might pour it back in. It's a bit aggressive. So yeah, it works just like if you remember, you know, when you were a kid and you have bottle can of Coke or a glass of Coke, and you put your straw in and you put your thumb on the top and then drew it out. It works just like that. And they're, you know, they've been used by winemakers and spirits makers for thousands of years. I think they found them in Greece, you know, in Rome and places like that. But it's the best way to get into a cask and get all the way down to, you know, a standard bourbon bar and everything. So it works really well.
This is a single pot still whiskey, almost 6 years old, aged in Pedro Jimenez,
Yes.
finished in Pedro Jimenez.
Started off in bourbon and then went into Pedro Jimenez. So now we've never done a pot still before at JJ Corry.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, we've never done one because I think they need age on. That's personal preference.
Okay.
I don't love a young pot still personally, right? I just think they need a bit of age on them. So again, this is a bit of an experiment, like putting it in the tiny cask, you're going to get a big bang of flavor off of the PX. So yeah, we've never really done this before, and maybe we won't do it this time. We'll have to wait and see how it turns out. So PX again, very traditionally used in whiskey finishing and whiskey maturation. You know, gives those kind of, again, sort of lovely chocolatey, biscuity sort of notes, big sort of bold kind of round flavors to whiskeys that,
Quite
that
sweet,
are
typically.
very sweet.
Yeah.
Because very, very sweet. So this again is from Bodega Robles, I think, and they make some of the sweetest PX in the world, in terms of sugar content, like actual bricks. So it's some of the sweetest PX you can find. So it'll kind of deliver on that desserty kind of stuff.
And so there have been a number of PX Pedro Jimenez releases over the past few years in different brands, and they vary wildly. Some of them are very, very in your face, powerful notes.
Yeah.
This one I would tend to be a little bit maybe on the lighter side on the nose, would it?
Yeah, little more subtle.
Yeah.
A little more subtle. But this pot still has always been tasted, and that's one of the reasons I never released it before. Like, you know, it was always like porridge half the time. Like, it was very, and not in a negative way. It's just that the flavor profile on that was particularly strong,
Okay.
and would and you know, therefore it can kind of stand up to this, even though this is a very, very high in sugar PX. So it's a bit more balanced. Actually, I haven't tasted this in a while. Oh, that's quite nice.
It is actually,
That's quite lovely.
I wasn't expecting those flavors.
No.
There's, what are those little push pops you used to have when you were younger?
Yeah.
Like a red push pop. hard boiled sweet.
Yeah, I'm also getting sort of a lovely kind of another sort of nuttiness, but not hazelnuts, a different sort of nuttiness, almonds almost off of it. You know, like what's that pastry made of almonds? That kind of thing. Marzipan, like marzipan notes, definitely.
Very sweet up front, in the front of the tongue. Very, very sweet. Lovely spice, peppery spice. It kind of dissipates into a dry finish. A little bit of that nuttiness, almond, sweet almond, vanilla.
Yeah.
And into kind of like a dry finish. That's a journey there in a couple of seconds.
It's almost like cake. It's like a slice of cake. You know what I mean?
It's very viscous, very thick, isn't it? It's
yeah.
In a good way. It's kind of it feels like there's more in your mouth than you sit down.
Yeah. Post about it. It's almost chewy. You know?
Yeah.
And that's very often what you get from a PX is that chewiness. So yeah, that's looking good. That's interesting.
Question from a couple of questions. One from JJ. Does the age reduce the pot still spice in your opinion?
I mean, look, personally, for me, yes, right? That is my personal opinion on it. That's what I think. And I'm not dissing any young pot stills that are out there. I'm really, really not. But the reason I've never released any is because it's just not to my particular taste when it's quite young.
So what you have here now is you've got, we hear this phrase a lot, we've all the notes, you can play different tunes, and whether they're blended, whether they're released individually is yet to be decided.
Mm-hmm.
But unbelievable flavors.
Completely different.
Unbelievably different.
So four completely different directions that we've gone on to. And we haven't
100%.
tasted everything. I'm telling you now, when we open all the rest of the cask, they'll all be completely unique and individual as well.
Yeah.
So we'll end up with 9 extremely different flavor components that we can play with. We might have one that we decide is completely standout that goes on its own. But you know, the fun now is to sort of get a bit more analytical about what these and what they bring to the table and what they deliver. And the other thing is to pick an end game. And when we blend anything, we know we're not. You're gonna fail. You're gonna fail if you're arbitrary blending a thing.
Yeah.
You have to have a thing in your head.
Right.
So you know, do we want something that delivers on all the classic sherry notes? You know, that people kind of recognize, those big sort of chewy round ones.
Yeah.
Or do we want something that's a bit more nuanced, like? And you know, as we're sitting down and blending, we can, you know, have that in our head and blend something and decide do we like that and go in a different direction. But we can go through that process now to figure out sort of where we end up. This is the alchemy bit of, honestly, this is the alchemy bit of whiskey making, the blending piece. You, particularly for a business like mine, which is just kind of started and we haven't done this before, so we don't know what we're going to get. Yeah. So we haven't done it before and don't know what we're going to get. You kind of have to make it up as you go along in terms of the blend piece. Right. There's no absolutes. So yeah, we can be quite flexible.
There's some good suggestions coming in on what to do with them, apart from put them in bottles and drink them. But Tom suggests, or as Mark suggests, possibly bottling them in smaller size. I know there's logistic challenges and glass availability, but that's something we've discussed as well.
Yeah, we've looked at it. I'm not ruling it out. It could be that we have 3 that are, you know, total bangers, and you know, and it's you can have the range. You know, you can really see. Okay, this is what Palo Cortado does. This is what Amontillado does. This is what PX does. This is what Oloroso does. That's really interesting. Like doing that even here today is really quite fascinating. So that's an option.
Yeah, it's incredible what could happen from here in terms of the permutations. These are a cask strength. 3 different styles. They could end up as blends. They could end up being cut to a certain percentage. They could remain a cask strength, all to be determined. So maybe we might poll the audience as well over the next week in terms of preferred styles, things they like, just to get a gauge where they're at. Doesn't mean that's where the direction of the whiskey will go necessarily, but curious like what people tend to like, kind of factor into if we do go down the blending road as well.
Yeah, and you know what we'll do for the in-person tasting as well. I'm just sorry, I'm making this up as I go along, Barry. But in New York, we'll certainly bring sherry samples with us as well. Okay. Because I know we'll kind of have our decisions made by then, but that's such an important part of this. Like when the sherry casks arrive on the farm, the big guys, they have a couple of gallons of sherry left in them, and we've already kind of tasted the sherry before. But like it's just interesting to make the connection of the whiskey plus the sherry and kind of the threads in between. So. Yeah, I mean, anything is possible.
The next steps. So this is really a lot of fun to come up here and lock the door of the tower and taste whiskey in here. I don't know how many people have done it.
Zero.
Very few. Zero. We're very lucky, and we got the little cliff cam as well. They did a great job in the Cliff Camp around there. And the next steps for us are on August 30th, we're going to do a tasting up here for up to 8 of our Whiskey Club members. If you are traveling in Ireland, be sure to be on our email list in the event that you could be here. Maybe you want to fly over for it, I don't know. But storiesandslips.com/cliffs. If you don't already get our emails, go there and sign up. We'll put the email out very soon to sign up for that. And then September 23rd in Manhattan, in New York, we will do a tasting of some of these, maybe not all 9 casks, but we'll have an evening where we all get together and we'll have a chance to sample these with the JJ Corry team as well. By that stage, we should know really where we've ended up and what's going to be the next steps with that. These whiskies will be available eventually on storiesandslips.com once we decide what we do with them. But with Stories and Sips, it's all about the stories that go with the sips. So we want to follow this journey. We want to talk to Rafa the Cooper, which we'll do next week, this week actually, in a few days, and we'll learn from him and we'll share the video with you. We'll share with you live streams of everything we're doing. So the event on the 30th of August, we'll live stream that. When it comes to if we decide to blend or to marry, to bottle, we'll share some of that so that you get to go behind the scenes and not just see a bottle on a shelf, buy it, not know a lot about it. You're getting the background to it and meeting the people behind it too, which I think is important. Any other questions from you folks? We're keeping an eye on our time here before they boot us out of the tower. Brendan says +1 for the selection box option. I know it would be lovely if we could just sample everything. The logistics are a bit more difficult. Leaves nodding going, they're very difficult. JJ says great job on casting, styles and placement of all of them. Leaving us in the cliffhanger, don't you? Yeah. David says you're busy with all the whiskey bus stuff. Yeah. Sadly, our whiskey bus can't come here this time because we're on the other side of the country, but we'll visit JJ Corry for future whiskey buses. And any more questions from you before we start to wrap up here? What else do we need to share about the tower? We've gone through the dates. It's just really exciting because you grew up near Cliffs of Moher. It's part of all of our Irish kind of identities. It's a visual part of the Irish identity. And now to kind of combine that with the love of whiskey.
Yeah, I think as well that there's a really important thing for me with whiskey, and people talk about terroir a lot, and that's a.
Don't get controversial now.
No, I won't. No, that's a concept, right? And that's a particular concept. My version of that in my head anyway is a sense of place, right? Yeah. A whiskey has a sense of place. It should have. And the sense of place is going to inform your approach to whiskey making, your approach to life, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And, every bottle of JJ Corry in theory is a little bit of County Clare in it, And I think that's really important for the Irish whiskey industry, that there's a bit of differentiation in terms of where it comes from, the people behind it. And so for me, the Cliffs of Moher, for me, it's iconic. It's up the road for me. It means something to me. Yeah. And to be able to do this here, yes, it's cool and everything, but it really anchors these whiskies right here on the edge of the world, in County Clare. And that might not be analyzable in a lab necessarily, but I just think it's a very important part of whiskey making.
That emotional part of whiskey is something that gets argued about as if it has any factor in it, and it 100% has a factor in the whiskey you drink. And to test that out for yourself, just have your significant other pour whiskey into a dark glass you don't know anything about what brand it came from, and you will think about that whiskey completely differently than if you saw the label and knew anything about it. And your emotions do play into it, your bias, your knowledge of that thing. But the place making, I think, is a really important point. And it's not just the place of distillation, the place of maturation, the place of bottling, the brand home. Yeah, it matters. It does matter. And I know there's a lot of Americans tuning in who you have a sense of place tied to a sense of Irish place, whether it's somewhere that your ancestors came from or that you visited and fallen in love with, or you came here and fell in love with someone, who knows. But you're tied to Ireland somehow as well emotionally. And that all gets bottled up.
Yeah, it does.
Lots of interest. Dave wants to know where to send the money now. Great, Dave. You're always the first out of the gate. Alan says, sounds very interesting. So well done on such an initiative. So stay tuned, folks. Go to storiesandslips.com/cliffs for updates. We'll share updates with you by email. And as soon as these become available, we'll ship them. We'll make all that information available to you to be able to pre-register for them. And these are going to get to you very quickly once they're bottled. So we're going to trial a new shipping system this time around for our next whiskey release. And the goal would be within a couple of weeks after bottling, they might be in your hands wherever you are in the United States, which would be amazing. Louise, thanks a million for doing this.
You.
This is great fun.
Yes, it is great.
Thanks a million.
This is another great project.
Our second one.
Stories and Sips.
Sláinte.
I know. Sláinte.
JJ says your passion shines through in all you do. Fantastic depths of whiskey knowledge. Fair play. Great stuff. So thanks everybody. We'll have a replay of this available on Facebook and YouTube. So if you had to, or if you missed any part of this, you can tune back into this after we end our broadcast now. So we're going to wrap up. There's people banging on the window trying to get in. They see all the whiskey. They smell it from outside. We'll give them a wave, Harry, and we'll sign off. So Sláinte, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Sláinte.
I look forward to sharing this whiskey with you all. Sláinte.